The armor was a legend whispered across the countless star systems of the Galactic Union, a relic of a bygone age crafted by hands long turned to dust. It sat untouched in the heart of the ruins of Etherion, a desolate planet littered with the remnants of an extinct race known as the Artilex. No one knew what calamity had wiped them out, but their creations lived on, scattered across the galaxy like fragments of a lost dream. Among these creations, none were more enigmatic or more coveted than the armor. It wasn't just the rumors of its invulnerability or its rumored ability to adapt to any enemy that drew beings from across the galaxy. It was the challenge. The armor was sentient, or so the tales claimed. It didn't merely sit, waiting to be claimed. It judged. Those who approached it could feel its scrutiny, an almost oppressive weight that seemed to peer into the depths of their soul. And for millennia, that judgment had ended the same way. Rejection. Some were turned away without explanation, left to wonder what had made them unworthy. Others, particularly the arrogant or violent, met more dire fates. There were stories of warriors being disintegrated on the spot, their ashes scattered in the eerie stillness of Etherion's ruins. I had seen the most recent failure with my own eyes. A Graxian warlord, seven-limbed, towering, his body a mass of muscle and cybernetic enhancements, had entered the relic chamber with all the confidence of someone who believed himself destined for greatness. The Graxian were a warrior species, their culture steeped in conquest and battle. To them, strength was the ultimate virtue, and this warlord was one of their finest. Yet, as he reached for the armor, a sudden flash of light consumed him. When it faded, nothing remained but silence. I stood in the shadows, a human envoy sent by the Galactic Union to observe the Graxians' attempt. My role was simple: record what happened and report back. Humans had no place in contests like this. Compared to the Graxian, the Elchani scholars, or the psychic Kylix, we were insignificant. An upstart species clinging to the edge of relevance. We were diplomats, explorers, and survivors, not warriors. I'd accepted that a long time ago. But as I watched the Graxian warlord's demise, a flicker of something unexpected stirred within me. It wasn't hope. I wasn't naive enough for that. It was curiosity. Why did the armor reject everyone? Was it truly judging their strength, their skill, or something else entirely? For centuries, the greatest minds and mightiest warriors of the galaxy had tried to unravel the mystery, and all had failed. Perhaps the answer was simpler than anyone had imagined. The armor remained in its stasis field, floating in the center of the chamber. Its surface shimmered like liquid obsidian, the patterns shifting and pulsing in a rhythm that almost felt alive. It was beautiful and terrifying, a relic of a time when gods might have walked among mortals. And as I stood there, clutching my datapad and trying to ignore the way the air seemed to hum with unseen energy, one thought refused to leave me. What would it see in me? The Graxian warlord's failure left the chamber silent except for the faint hum of the armor's stasis field. The tension in the air was palpable, as though the ancient relic itself was challenging anyone else to step forward. No one did. The remaining Graxian entourage exchanged nervous glances, their bravado dissipating in the wake of their leader's annihilation. Other alien observers, Elchani scholars and Kylix diplomats among them, whispered to one another in hushed tones. Even the ever-curious Elchani hesitated to approach the armor now. I lingered at the back, keeping my distance. I had no illusions about my role here. I was an observer, not a participant. Yet I couldn't shake the nagging curiosity that had rooted itself in my mind. Why had the armor rejected the Graxian warlord? He was the epitome of physical strength and tactical cunning, precisely the kind of being one might expect to wield a weapon of legend. And yet, he hadn't even been granted the chance to don it. Hey, don't you try it. The voice startled me, pulling me from my thoughts. I turned to see Talrex, an Elchani historian with whom I had struck up an unlikely friendship during this expedition. His luminous blue eyes gleamed with mischief, though his expression was genuinely curious. The Elchani were known for their insatiable hunger for knowledge, and Talrex was no exception. Me? I laughed nervously, glancing at the armor. That's not funny, Talrex. Did you see what just happened to that Graxion? I'd end up as a pile of ash. Talrex's lips curled into a faint smile. Perhaps not. You're not like them, Nathan. You're not seeking power or glory. Maybe that's exactly what the armor is looking for, someone who doesn't want it. It's ridiculous, I said, though his words struck a chord in me. Even if I wanted to, what makes you think I'd be worthy? I'm just a human. We're not exactly known for our prowess in this galaxy. Talrex tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. Perhaps that's the point. The Ardalex were enigmatic beings, their creations often steeped in riddles and paradoxes. What if the armor isn't looking for strength or cunning? What if it's searching for something else? Like what? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Purpose, he replied simply. Humility, a willingness to act not for oneself, but for others. I glanced back at the armor, its liquid-like surface rippling faintly as though reacting to the conversation. The pull I had felt earlier grew stronger, an inexplicable urge to approach it. But the fear of failure, of death, was equally powerful. Before I could respond, Talrex leaned closer and whispered, "You've seen everyone else fail. What do you have to lose, really? Sometimes the most unlikely answers are the correct ones." I took a step forward before I realized what I was doing. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing louder than the last. The room seemed to grow quieter, the whispers fading into the background. And then I crossed the threshold. The moment I stepped into the stasis field, the air changed. It was subtle at first, a faint tingling on my skin, like static electricity brushing against me. But as I moved closer, the sensation grew stronger, enveloping me in a cocoon of energy. Every sound in the chamber faded, replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to press down on my chest. My breath hitched, and for a fleeting moment, I considered retreating. But I couldn't. Something about the armor drew me forward, an inexplicable pull that was equal parts curiosity and compulsion. I felt the eyes of the other observers on my back, their disbelief palpable. A human stepping forward where giants of the galaxy had fallen. I was sure they were already whispering their predictions of my imminent. As I neared the armor, a sensation unlike anything I'd ever experienced washed over me. It wasn't just the weight of the stasis field or the energy humming in the air. It was a presence. The armor wasn't merely alive in some abstract sense. It was aware. I could feel it, as though invisible eyes were boring into my soul, peeling back every layer of my being and examining what lay beneath. Then it spoke. It wasn't a sound, not in the way we understand sound. The words, or perhaps the feelings, appeared directly in my mind, resonating with a clarity that left no room for doubt. Who are you? The question caught me off guard. My instinct was to give my name, but something stopped me. This wasn't a question about identity in the simple, mundane sense. It was deeper, probing for something beyond the superficial labels we use to define ourselves. "I'm Nathan Cole," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. "I'm a historian, an envoy. I'm here to observe." The presence seemed to shift, its attention narrowing in focus. The air grew heavier, and I felt a strange warmth behind my eyes, as though the armor was sifting through my memories. My childhood, my studies, my failures, and my quiet determination to prove that humanity had a place in the stars. It all lay bare before this ancient, unfathomable intelligence. Why step forward then? The voice carried no malice, only a cold, clinical curiosity. I hesitated. The answer was simple, but voicing it felt like bearing a piece of my soul. I wanted to understand, I admitted. You've rejected everyone else, and I needed to know why. I don't expect to succeed, I just needed to know. The presence shifted again, and for a moment I felt something akin to amusement, or perhaps approval. Then the armor's voice resonated once more, the words sharp and pointed. What do you fight for? The question hit me like a thunderclap, reverberating through my mind. My thoughts scrambled for an answer, each possibility weighed and discarded in the span of a heartbeat. Finally, I took a deep breath and spoke the truth. I fight for survival, I said. For humanity's survival. We're not the strongest or the smartest. We're not conquerors or warriors. But we fight because we have to. Not for power or glory, just to live, to endure. The energy in the air shifted again, becoming almost gentle. The armor's presence withdrew slightly, as though considering my answer. And then it spoke a single word. Proceed. The word hung in my mind, reverberating like a gong struck in an empty hall. Proceed. It was a simple command, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken implications. I stood frozen, unsure if I had truly heard or felt it, or if my mind was playing tricks on me. The others watching from the edges of the chamber remained silent, their gazes boring into me like physical weights. No one had made it this far before. I took a cautious step forward, the energy of the stasis field brushing against my skin like waves of warm water. The armor was close now, its surface shimmering in intricate, ever-shifting patterns. Each ripple seemed alive, as if the metal was breathing in time with an unseen rhythm. My heart raced, every instinct screaming at me to turn back, to retreat to the safety of the shadows. And yet, I couldn't. Something inside me, a pull I couldn't fully explain, drew me onward. When I was within arm's reach, I hesitated. The armor floated there, seemingly weightless, suspended in its field of light. Its presence was overwhelming, a paradox of beauty and menace. I could feel it watching me, waiting. My hand hovered in the air, trembling as I wrestled with the final barrier of fear. The memory of the Graxian warlord flashed through my mind. His overconfidence turned to ash in an instant. Was I about to meet the same fate? The armor didn't allow me time to second guess. As if sensing my hesitation, it moved. The liquid metal surface rippled and surged forward, reaching for me. I barely had time to react before it wrapped around my outstretched hand, the cool material sliding over my skin like living silk. For a brief, terrifying moment, I thought it was consuming me. The armor flowed upward, enveloping my arm, then my chest, until my entire body was encased in its shifting, obsidian embrace. Then came the rush. A torrent of energy surged through me, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming, like standing in the path of a roaring waterfall. My senses expanded, my mind flooded with impressions I couldn't fully comprehend. I felt the armor connecting to me, sifting through my thoughts, my memories, my very essence. It wasn't invasive, though. It was curious, as if it were learning who I was and what I stood for. Images flashed before my eyes. Not just my memories, but something deeper, older. Battles fought on distant worlds, alliances forged and broken, civilizations rising and falling. The armor had seen it all. It had been wielded by beings far beyond my understanding, each of them contributing to the vast reservoir of knowledge now pouring into my mind. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the storm of sensations receded. I stood there, the armor now a seamless part of me. It was weightless, yet I could feel its power humming beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. For the first time, I realized that it wasn't just armor. It was alive. "We are one," the voice whispered in my mind, its tone softer now, almost reverent. "And now we fight together." I staggered, catching my breath as the enormity of what had just happened began to sink in. I'd done it. The armor had accepted me. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying. What had I just become? I stood in the center of the chamber, encased in the armor that now pulsed faintly with its own energy, as if it were breathing along with me. It was alive, and more than that, it was bonded to me. The realization sent a chill through me, though it wasn't fear I felt, it was awe, mingled with the overwhelming sense that I was now part of something far larger than myself. The first thing I noticed was how my senses had changed. The air was no longer just air. It was a tapestry of particles, each one carrying faint traces of data. I could feel the subtlest vibrations in the chamber, the faintest shifts in the flow of energy around me. The armor wasn't just a shield, it was an extension of my body and mind. It translated the world into sensations I had no words for, a symphony of information that filled every corner of my awareness. The second thing I noticed was the silence. The chamber was filled with observers, yet no one spoke. They all stared at me, a mixture of shock and disbelief etched onto their faces. The Graxian delegation looked furious, their pride stung by what had just happened. The Kylix representatives, with their glowing psychic auras, seemed almost reverent, their compound eyes shimmering as they regarded me. Even Talrex, who was usually quick with a wry comment, stood frozen, his blue eyes wide with astonishment. I took a tentative step forward, and the armor moved with me as if it had always been a part of me. It was weightless, perfectly balanced, every motion fluid and precise. I could feel its power coursing through me, a silent reservoir waiting to be tapped. It wasn't just strength. It was something deeper, something that resonated with my very soul. "What are you?" Talrek finally managed, his voice barely more than a whisper. Before I could respond, the armor answered for me. "We are the guardian of purpose." The voice echoed not only in my mind, but in the chamber itself, reverberating like a chorus of ancient tones. The gathered aliens flinched at the sound, as though it carried a weight that pressed against their very beings. "What does that mean?" I asked, directing my question inward. I could feel the armor's presence within me, its thoughts like a second mind intertwined with my own. "We choose not the strongest, nor the wisest. We choose the one who seeks not power but meaning. You have purpose, and through you we shall fulfill our own." The weight of those words settled over me, and I began to understand. This armor, this ancient creation, was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a tool for balance, a force meant to tip the scales in favor of survival, not conquest. It hadn't chosen me because I was special in the ways the galaxy revered. It had chosen me because I wasn't. I was ordinary, driven by a simple, undeniable will to endure. But the silence of the room was broken by a low growl. One of the Graxian delegates stepped forward, his clawed hands flexing at his sides. "This is a farce," he snarled, his voice dripping with disdain. "A human? A weakling? You cannot be the one." The armor's voice answered him before I could. "You misunderstand strength." The Graxian flinched, his bravado faltering. For a moment, I felt sorry for him. He had come expecting triumph, and instead, he had been shown the limits of his understanding. But I had no time to dwell on his reaction. The armor spoke to me once more, its voice low and steady. "The galaxy will not accept this easily. They will test you as they have tested us. Are you prepared to stand?" I didn't hesitate. I tightened my fists, feeling the power surging through me. "If it's a fight they want," I said aloud, my voice steady, "then they'll see what humanity is made of." The first challenge came faster than I anticipated. No sooner had I declared my readiness than the Graxian delegate lunged forward, his 7 limbs moving with astonishing speed. He was a towering mass of muscle and cybernetics, built for combat in ways no human could hope to match. His claws gleamed in the chamber's light, aimed straight at my unprotected throat. Or so he thought. The armor reacted before I could, its awareness merging with mine in an instant. Time seemed to slow as the world sharpened into crystalline clarity. I could see the Graxian's trajectory, predict the path of his strike, and feel the faint hum of energy radiating from his enhanced body. My own body moved as if guided by instinct. No, by the armor. I stepped to the side, fluid and precise, avoiding his attack by the barest fraction of an inch. The Graxian staggered past me, his momentum carrying him forward. Before he could recover, I turned and raised my arm. A pulse of energy shot forth, not from any weapon, but from the armor itself. It struck him square in the chest, a controlled burst that sent him crashing to the ground. The chamber shook with the force of his impact, and a hushed silence fell over the room. I stared down at him, my breathing steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The armor's voice resonated in my mind, calm and composed. Restraint is strength. Victory need not be destruction. The Graxian groaned as he struggled to rise, his pride clearly wounded more than his body. I extended a hand toward him, an offer of peace. For a moment he hesitated, his expression a mixture of anger and confusion. Then, grudgingly, he accepted my help. His massive clawed hand gripping mine as I pulled him to his feet. The room erupted in murmurs. The observers, Keelix, and others whose names I didn't know, watched with wide eyes and whispered among themselves. The Graxian stumbled back to his delegation, his gaze burning with something I couldn't quite place. Respect, perhaps? Or maybe the beginnings of understanding. "Enough!" a voice called out, sharp and commanding. All eyes turned to an Elchani diplomat, her silver hair catching the light as she stepped forward. Her people were known for their wisdom, their deep understanding of diplomacy and balance. She regarded me with an intensity that made me feel as though she could see straight through the armor into my soul. "You have proven yourself capable, human," she said, her voice measured. "But capability is not enough. The galaxy will demand more. You carry the weight of an artifact that has rejected every other being for millennia. Do you understand what that means?" "I think I do," I replied, though the truth was more complicated. The armor had chosen me, but I still didn't fully understand why. "It means I don't have the luxury of failure." Her gaze softened, just slightly. "You will be tested, Nathan Cole. Not just by individuals like the Graxian, but by entire civilizations. They will fear you, they will challenge you, and they will seek to take what you now carry." I nodded, the weight of her words settling on my shoulders. "Then let them try. I didn't ask for this, but now that it's mine, I won't let anyone take it." The armor pulsed with warmth, a silent acknowledgement of my resolve. And as I stood there, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, I realized that this was only the beginning. The armor had accepted me, but the galaxy was far from ready to do the same. The journey back to the human outpost was anything but quiet. Word of the armor's acceptance had spread faster than I thought possible, reaching corners of the galaxy I hadn't even considered. Every transmission, every communique, carried the same message: a human, weak, unremarkable, and insignificant by galactic standards, had been chosen by the Artilec's most powerful relic. It was a truth that upended centuries of belief about what constituted strength, and the galaxy wasn't taking it lightly. As I disembarked from the transport ship, I was met with the sight of a crowd gathered outside the gates. They were a mix of humans and aliens, their expressions ranging from awe to suspicion to outright hostility. Among them were ambassadors and soldiers, scientists and traders, all drawn to witness what many were calling an anomaly. I stepped forward, the armor glinting faintly in the pale light of the outpost's twin suns. It felt as though every pair of eyes locked onto me, dissecting my every move. A man broke from the crowd and approached. A figure I recognized instantly. General Markson, the head of human military operations in this sector, stood tall and imposing, his steel-gray eyes narrowing as they scanned the armor. His presence carried the weight of authority, but there was something else in his gaze, a deep unease. "Cole," he said, his voice measured, "you've caused quite a stir." "Not by choice," I replied, meeting his gaze. "The armor, it chose me." "I didn't expect this, General." His eyes flicked over the intricate patterns shifting across the armor's surface. "Do you understand what you're carrying, what this means for humanity?" I hesitated, the weight of his question pressing down on me. "I'm starting to," I said. "But this isn't just about humanity, is it? The armor, it's bigger than any one species." Markson's lips tightened into a thin line. "Bigger, yes, but that won't stop every government, every faction from wanting it for themselves. You've made us a target, Cole." "It didn't make us anything," I said, my voice hardening. "The galaxy already dismissed us. If this armor changes that, then maybe it's exactly what we needed." Before Markson could respond, the armor's voice resonated in my mind, and for the first time it spoke aloud for others to hear. "You carry not power but purpose. The galaxy will test you. The question is not whether you will endure, but whether they will understand." The crowd stirred uneasily, whispers rippling through their ranks. Markson's expression shifted, his unease tempered by something that might have been respect, or perhaps resignation. He stepped back, gesturing toward the outpost gates. "You'd better come inside. We need to discuss how to handle this." I followed him, feeling the weight of every gaze on my back. As the gates closed behind us, the reality of my situation began to crystallize. This wasn't just about me anymore. The armor had chosen a human, and that choice had set events into motion that couldn't be undone. The galaxy wouldn't accept it easily, and challenges would come from every corner of space. But as I felt the armor's presence within me, a steady, unyielding force, I knew I wouldn't face them alone. Together, we would prove that purpose could outweigh power, that humanity was more than the galaxy had ever believed. And so, as the doors sealed shut and the weight of what lay ahead loomed large, I took a deep breath. The fight was just beginning.